Welcome to Wellsprings of Faith. My name is Father Jürgen Liias. I'm a Roman Catholic priest. I'm a senior priest on the staff of St. Patrick's Church in Stoneham, Massachusetts. And our program, which is being recorded in Melrose, Massachusetts, is a program about religious faith and a journey of faith in a person's life and the fruit of that faith in their work. I welcome a new friend that I've just had the privilege of working with at St. Patrick's, Paul Phillipino. He is in hospital chaplaincy ministry in the Boston area, and we look forward to hearing about his journey of faith and how you became a hospital chaplain. So this is about you, and your journey of faith. Share a little bit about your childhood and how you came to know Jesus.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to be with you. I'm actually from the neighboring Fall River Diocese.
Okay.
And grew up mostly on Cape Cod. And it was when I went off to college at Holy Cross where I really sort of had my heart open to service and service in the church and even beyond that. And went to work for the Knights of Columbus Supreme Council Office in New Haven, Connecticut. That was a special place in my life, a place where I lived for 8 years before discerning that I would like to consider a vocation for the Society of Jesus.
Okay.
And in those years in New Haven, I also had an itch to get involved in my community in various ways, involving even politics and being asked to run for office, getting involved in campaigns.
Well, before we get to all that, go back a little to your childhood. Did you grow up in a Catholic home?
Yeah, I'm a cradle Catholic.
A cradle Catholic,
yes,
as they call it. And was the faith a strong part of your home life?
Certainly.
Yes.
I would say God was there, and I was being made aware of His presence in various ways through my faith family who was very faithful.
They were pretty devout.
Devout. I had an uncle who was a priest, who's serving in the Diocese of Norwich, Connecticut now, and my dad's older brother, and a great uncle, Uncle Lou, who served in the diocese, my home diocese, for many years, and who died in 2002. And so I knew of the priesthood. I knew of the church. I had great experiences within the church, although I was public educated, not Catholic educated. And
it sounds like an old Catholic family where people had, uncles who were priests and aunts that were nuns, and so sort of that life that I remember that a lot growing up. Even though I wasn't Catholic, grew up in Charlestown, which is all Irish Catholic, and there was just sort of the culture was with the aunts and uncles who were in the religious life and a kind of formative thing.
Kind of.
Do you remember any particular moment when you kind of felt like Jesus specifically talking to you and creating what I would call it, they say in the evangelical world, which I kind of shared in before I became a Catholic, a personal relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, I would say like that moment for me came in my young adulthood. However, I was being made aware in that moment of how the seeds were planted earlier. Sure. And how they had been nurtured by my family. But
it's kind of an awakening to something that was already there. Mm-hmm. What happened in college specifically?
My senior year, we made a retreat of the spiritual exercises that was modified sort of for the purpose of reaching seniors in college.
Yes.
At this sort of opportune time in their lives, and an invitation to be in silence, finding solitude and silence and making space to waste time with God, as they say, with many really good mentors.
How long was the retreat?
It was a 5-day.
5-day retreat. So 5 days of silence. Mm-hmm. Probably for college kids, that's quite a new experience.
Absolutely.
And yet can be, as it was with you, quite profound. So what happened exactly?
On that retreat, what was made clear to me sort of in those experiences of making space, allowing God to speak to me, having a sense that He had invited me in a special way to respond to His call to be to love Him and serve Him, and that it wasn't for people around me that I was being called to live that life. It was for Him, and so on that retreat, I think a little bit of freedom came from it, of freedom to determine the direction of my life in some way, to open my heart to greater service at a time in my life when that was possible, and I came back from that retreat like highly motivated, highly wanting to do that, respond to that calling. I would say, and one of the ways I did that was by doing what my friends thought was a very unconventional thing, is to going to work for a Catholic organization like the Knights of Columbus. And I got a lot of questions about that. So.
But it was, I mean, I think what you said was sort of interesting, the distinction between really understanding service, that you're serving God, not other people. Now, it obviously involves serving other people, but so I find that's also true, incredibly true in the priesthood. You just keep your eyes on the Lord, because I mean, I've worked a lot with young priests and seminarians and said, make sure you keep your eyes on the Lord, that He is who you're serving, because you're going to at times be hurt by the people, and you're going to even be tempted to hate the people. And that will not make a good priest out of you, or for that matter, any Christian in any service. But if you keep your eyes on the Lord, then you know He's serving. Even the rejections are a form of paschal mystery of offering your sufferings with Christ, because you're doing it for Him and with Him. Yeah, so I think that's an important distinction. So you went off, and the door opened for this, the Knights of the Columbus. Now, this is a show, most people in the Catholic world certainly know what the Knights of Columbus are, but talk a little bit about that and what you did there, and how that impacted your faith.
Yeah. How it impacted my faith was through surrounding me with some really solid friendships, people who, you know how they say iron sharpens iron.
Yes.
For me, that was certainly...
The Bible says that.
Certainly the case. I've heard of that. I've heard of the Bible.
Being a former Protestant, I'm trying to help Catholics know there's a lot of stuff in the Bible.
Yeah, how much time do you have? So through those friendships, not only my colleagues, but a critical mass of them being the men that I worked alongside, and my bosses and what have you, but also people that I came into contact with, including my friend who had a men's group at the time, who's now working in advancement for religious order, who discerned with the Brothers of Hope here in Boston, who work at Boston. They used to work at least at Boston University.
I've had a few of them on this show when they.
And so we had a men's group where we would gather. We would have adoration. We would have a moment to share with each other, fellowship, talk about our faith, and how we wanted to grow in our faith during that time. So it was that's how it affected me. I could go on about the Knights and their unique history in this country, as being started in the 1800s. By an Irish Catholic priest,
Father McGivney?
Father Michael McGivney.
McGivney, I've heard of him. Yeah,
who's blessed.
Wow,
yeah. So,
yeah, and that's the thing that it's kind of the premier men's, but it needs some revival too. It's the way in some places it's still going strong. Men coming together.
Yeah,
the church can be a bit too feminized sometimes. I remember the Cursillo movement. You know what the Cursillo movement was? Do you know about Cursillo? It was a movement of renewal started in Spain.
From my
but what a bishop looked out in his congregation, and it was all women, and he said we need a renewal of men, and he started this retreat. Cursillo is a short course. It's a 3-day weekend, and it's still a profound movement, but it started out just for men, because needing men to get back to the church. So you worked for them, and then you mentioned earlier, then how did that lead to your discernment about a life as a Jesuit?
Well, it was something that I had thought of and had in the back of my mind from before moving on to live and work in Connecticut, and and I had thought about it and needed to be sure that it was something that I wanted to try.
Yeah.
And I had that kind of support and reinforcement to do it. It was almost ideal conditions for that in an organization that was very supportive of the vocations to the priesthood, and it just took me a little while to try that out, to make that decision to move towards that.
What made you choose the Jesuits? Because Holy Cross isn't Jesuits, is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I got mixed up.
Yeah. Holy Cross is a Jesuit school.
Jesuit school, okay.
The other Jesuit school in Boston area.
Although
it started before BC, it was
preceded Boston College,
in 1843.
I know it. It's Notre Dame that's not Jesuit, right? That's what I was thinking of. It's a different order, yeah.
Yeah, so that experience there, which included the introduction to Ignatian spirituality, which I had kind of nurtured and cultivated during that time in New Haven, and it was a sense that I wanted to continue in that direction, which I do now, even having left the Society of Jesus. So, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So what did you just, how long were you with them?
I was with them for 7 years.
7 years, a good chunk of your life. Wow. How long is it to become a Jesuit priest normally?
In the U.S., like 11 years.
11 years.
Everybody's different. For Ignatius, that was very important.
St. Paul says, I think in the letter to Timothy, don't lay your hands on anyone too suddenly. I guess the Jesuits are taking that admonition quite seriously.
Yeah, and there was a reason for that. At a time when some would say there was more than one Reformation going on. Yeah. And Ignatius wanted there to be learned clergy who were prepared to, be a part of that renewal of the church.
And the Counter-Reformation, yes, right. And interesting. Yeah, I just had the wonderful privilege of last year going on a priest pilgrimage. It was just a group of priests to Spain, and obviously a lot of our journey was about the saints of Spain, with Teresa of Avila, obviously Ignatius, St. Francis Xavier, also Jesuit, and St. John of the Cross, who was a Carmelite like Teresa.
How was it?
Wonderful, but it was for me, I'm a relatively new Catholic. It's I keep saying I'm a new Catholic, but it's been 12 years, but the Catholic universe is so big without saints, you can spend your whole life and only be having explored a little part of the totality of the church in time and space. But that was a wonderful encounter with those. So out of that, how did that move from leaving that, and how did the sense of call to hospital chaplaincy emerge?
Yeah, well, I had a number of experiences as a Jesuit. They call them experiments, kind of like internships in a sense,
right? Where
you have a chance of seeing where the Lord is calling you and what gifts you have to offer for building the kingdom. And so I was not only in hospitals, but had jail ministry experience, teaching in a high school, actually, a Catholic high school, and helping with the campus ministry. And then even before being a chaplain in hospitals, working as a nurse's aide, which all the Jesuit novices do this. This is part of their formation. Of being with people as they're encountering their own mortality, and being of service to them at that moment. And through those experiences of the pastoral and spiritual care, even though I entertained ideas of teaching or going on for further studies, that was sort of where my gifts were. And I actually switched my regency from high school ministry to doing chaplaincy, and what they call, as I'm sure you're familiar, as clinical pastoral education.
CPE,
so there's a kind of formation and training that is not strictly ecclesial. Right. It's a kind of a formation and training in personal, the kind of skills of attending to somebody who's in need, regardless of what their faith tradition.
Right. Now, a little bit, I'm being a new Catholic, the Jesuits, it is a community of priests, right? They're all, once you finish the process, obviously, you're not a priest immediely, but eventually, if you stay with the community.
Well, not entirely.
No, there are some.
We talk a lot about how little people know about the brother vocation in general, and I think for the society, because the majority of them the lion's share of them are priests, but there are Jesuit brothers.
There are Jesuit brothers. Yeah. And the other thing, I maybe, again, it's a false impression. You know, I've known quite a number of Franciscans and Dominicans, and not as many Jesuits, although when I went to seminary, the Jesuit seminary was actually on the campus in Cambridge with the Episcopal Seminary. It was kind of a ecumenical experiment. I don't know if it failed or not, but it's ended. And I took courses with the Jesuit teachers at Weston, it was called. But I know there are a lot of Jesuits who are academics. That's a big part of it. But it seems like their ministries are all over the place. There's not it's not a set. Like some religious orders have a particular charism and a particular vocation for their teaching or missionary work or working with the poor. But the Jesuits seem to be all over the place in a sense.
Well, yeah, I think you're hitting on something, it's hitting close to home for me because as part of my discernment to leave the society, I had a lot of anxiety about what that I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
And I had some romantic notions of what it meant to be a missionary priest.
Yeah.
And a lot of kind of was getting a little bit hung up on what am I going to do? And one of my friends who's actually now a pastor in a Jesuit friend who's a pastor in a church in Chicago, he put it to me early in my formation this way, that a lot of people want to work with Jesuits. Not everybody wants to live with them and pray with them. And that just stuck in the back of my head. I thought nothing of it. But there's a certain kind of truth to that for me. I was sort of all business. I was focused on sort of what the ministry was.
Yeah.
And because for me, that was something that I found in the society that was really life-giving for me, was meaningful work that I really enjoyed.
The work, yeah.
And luckily you can still do that without being a priest.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
Where was the community? Where was the actual seminary that you were part of?
There was. It wasn't Weston, although I did live for a time with Jesuits in Boston in my last year in the society. There were a number of places. My graduate study was at Loyola Chicago, which was primarily focused on philosophy studies, social philosophy, social justice-oriented philosophy, and some theology as well, thankfully, which is coming in handy now. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. I see. Mm-hmm.
And the novitiate.
So your experiences in all these sort of, what did you call them that they had
experiments.
To do? Experiments. And it was both to learn things, but also to discern things, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of what God was calling you specifically, and your unique you that we all are. And so how did that suddenly emerge as finally the decision about being a hospital chaplain? And what does a hospital chaplain do? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I can talk about that. A hospital chaplain is somebody who accompanies the sick, in my case. However, there could be a chaplain in a number of institutional settings, a spiritual guide or a leader who is not primarily based in the church. I think the history, I read a really interesting book called Heart of a Chaplain, which if you haven't heard of it, you might find interesting, where the history actually goes, it's compiled and partially written by a retired Air Force chaplain named Jim Browning. And he talks about, the history goes back to Martin of Tours.
Oh, really?
Which I think is the 300s, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's pretty far back.
And sort of like the origin of chaplaincy, largely in Western Christianity. However, in some places, the chaplain's focus is expanding beyond just the Christian faith. And a number of organizations are set up to provide support and formation for those who might want to consider this path, including the Chaplaincy Innovation Lab in Waltham, which you may have heard of.
No, I haven't.
There's a similar organization called the Marsh Institute for Chaplains down south that Jim Browning's involved with.
Is that specifically Catholic?
No. None of them are
None of them
explicitly Catholic.
So there are prison chaplains and hospital chaplains and school chaplains and military chaplains and fire chaplains, police I mean, sometimes those I worked for a while in Charlestown. There was an extraordinary old priest who's since gone home to the Lord. He was in his 90s, but he could never stop working until he dropped dead. But he was a hospital chaplain, fire chaplain for the city of Boston. And he was the chief chaplain. And he had some amazing stories of going to fires and rescuing people and being with grieving of widows of, firemen who died in fires, and enormous. You sort of accompany people in a lot of these cases in suffering and their life's journey.
Absolutely. We would like to be there in the hospital anyway for everybody. But oftentimes, in my own experience, I find myself accompanying those who are seriously ill and their families and the staff members who are caring for them as well.
How does it work? Obviously as a priest, I've gone to the hospital innumerable times, but always in the status of visiting parishioners of mine who are in the hospital, and that's a ministry. But in your case, you're kind of part of the institution, so you don't know the families. They're strangers to you, and to some extent initially you're a stranger to them. So what would be tell some stories of meaningful moments and that kind of journeying around as a stranger, meeting people in suffering and in the hospitals.
Yeah, I introduce myself as part of the care team, generally working along with the doctors and nurses in that setting to make sure that they have what they need, which includes care for the soul just as much as the body.
Yes.
And what I find, sadly, actually, is that a lot of folks are not accustomed to having spiritual support. And so it's not as if I am replacing in any way their own clergy, although we love to work with community clergy to the extent that it's possible. Oftentimes it might be somebody's limited experience of having that kind of support.
Right.
And having somebody to listen and to hear what they're going through and what resources generally would be my approach to help them access the resources that maybe they didn't know they had at their disposal. And so, that involves care of the family, especially when the person is not able to directly, the direct care is not possible. And getting to know the person through their family system and finding out from them and those who are able to speak for them when they're not able to speak for themselves, what's important to them.
Wow.
And making sure that when people are going through suffering, as you say, loss, all types of losses, not only death, that they are able to have support in adjusting to that. That losing their loved one, for example, or somebody's life changing from an injury, or any number of cases that might happen, or for the staff members, a tough case in which it's helpful to have the spiritual support and all the support possible to build trust between the family and the team and what they're able to do or what they're not able to do.
Right. And I suspect it's also a ministry to caregivers, to the doctors, nurses, and all the rest, because it can be a traumatic work. I mean, seeing people suffering, having people you're operating on who die on you, there's just a lot of suffering going around, and it's hard not to being exposed to that. It can be overwhelming at times. And having support there. Do you do in the hospitals you work at? Do they have services or masses or other things in the hospital? Or is it mostly one-on-one care to patients?
It's mostly one-on-one care or care of the family in the bedside, at the bedside rather. However, there are services. There is Catholic Mass offered occasionally. There are ways of honoring special holidays, the Feast of St. Blaise, Blessing of the Throats, what have you. but always kind of keeping that focus on the healing, on the core mission of the institution. And when those services are not available within the hospital, making sure people have the resources that they need to access that.
Did you, in your training, either within the church or within the order, have much exposure to what I would call the healing ministry of the church? And I mean specifically, not obviously in a sense, all aspects of the ministry of the church it's the healing of relationship to God, the healing of the universe, everything. But specifically also to the ministry of healing, prayer ministry with people and sacramental ministry with people for actual healing. I'm very active at the Lazarus Shrine for Healing, which you may know of, which is a new church in town. Well, it was an old church, but it was made into a healing shrine, and an emphasis more on the supernatural power of prayer and relics and all the paraphernalia we have in the Catholic Church is a rich repertoire of healing tools, we might say, but also to not only be with people in suffering, but also, as Jesus did, actually share with the medical team in the healing of the person. We don't use medicine, but we use prayer and we use sacraments and.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot in your question. I would say the short answer is probably not as much as we could have in terms of that exposure to sort of the mystical element of the faith and the supernatural. It's mostly in encounters with non-Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, in which I'm exposed to that kind of a spirituality.
Really?
Yeah, it's not as often in the Catholic Church. The Catholic focus is often on, with the limited number of priests we have, making sure that if somebody's in need of anointing of the sick, that they're able to have that, and confession if they want before.
Yeah, because it was a transforming experience for me as a young priest. I grew up in a kind of liberal Protestant tradition, which, to sum it up, is a little maybe a little abrupt to say, but I was taught in seminary that Jesus never healed anyone. These were all legends and stories about him. And then I worked at a parish where the priest believed in spiritual healing, and he would pray with people, and he really did, and he was part of a movement within the Episcopal Church for the resurrection, you might say, of actually an actual healing ministry that looked like what Jesus did.
Praying for physical healing.
Yeah, praying for physical healing. Yeah, and emotional healing, all that, and deliverance from evil spirits. I mean, those things.
Exorcism.
Which would be a little. But I was taught this stuff was just basically myth and. But then I met priests. I saw healings, and I saw, engage people with, and it changed my whole relationship. Now, I haven't seen as much as I like to see, but I still believe in prayer ministry for healing and sacramental ministry, and I think that could be a richer part of a partnership with the church and medicine. To really see, we're not just there to comfort them we're not just there to comfort the people when the doctor fails in his task, but in fact there are some powers. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time. Tell us what's your favorite thing you love about the work you're doing for Christ.
Well, I like showing up at the right time and helping people access what gives them peace and comfort. What you just shared reminds me of a quote from Rabbi Kushner, why bad things happen to good people, which you may have read. People who pray for miracles rarely get them. But if, any more than children who pray for bicycles or good grades or good boyfriend get them as a result of praying for them. But people who pray for courage, people who pray for strength to bear the unbearable, and for the grace to remember what they have left instead of what they have lost,
Yeah.
very often have their prayer answered.
Prayer they answered, yes, yes. Well, that's a good, wonderful testimony. Thank you so much, Paul. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Paul Phillipino, a hospital chaplain. And I hope if you're ever in the hospital, anywhere, there are services provided by almost every hospital for chaplaincy services, both volunteers, local clergy, professional people like Paul who are actually on the staff of the hospital. Let God minister to you through them in that time when you are there, especially. And may the Lord bless you, keep you, and heal you. Amen.